Hi, Susan Adams here with Quilted Hearts. I'm going to show you how to do a binding. There's several people who do their own technique, but this is the way I do it. I get this question asked all the time when I'm demonstrating the binding knees, is how do you do a binding? So first of all, I do 2 1/4 strips, unless I've got a really thick quilt with either a fluffy back or thick batting in it. Then I do 2 1/2. Okay, and so then I prepare them. I get them all cut, and then I put them together. And I like to make a diagonal seam so that there's not a lot of bulk in my binding. So I do it like this. I lay that one down there, put this one on top, and I'm going to sew from that to that corner on a 45-degree angle. Okay, well, I don't need to draw a line. I used to draw lines, but I don't draw lines anymore because I have this diagonal seam tape that I've lined up with my needle hole right here, and mine's pretty chewed up. I need to replace it, but I line that red line up and it goes out, and that helps me do my diagonal stitches because I just line up the next spot that I want to end at. That little opening is right on the red line, and I'm just going to follow that red line all the way through, and then I get a nice straight joining stitch. Then I trim these off to 1/4 of an inch, and I press them open. Now, I've been told you don't need to press them open, but I think it's lumpy if you don't, and I don't like it to be lumpy on my binding. So I still do some things that I was taught in the beginning. I still think it's the best. Okay, so I've got all my strips sewed together. I'm going to be binding this table runner, okay? And I've got all my strips sewed together. You take to know how much binding you want to get, and I don't do it on the bias, but you measure around it, and you're supposed to, there's a formula you use, and I can't remember what it is, but I just add a couple of inches for my corners and for my joining. So I would add about 8 inches, because a couple inches for each corner, and then I have a joining. But on this one, I just added a whole nother strip, and so I'm going to have plenty of leftover when I come to the end. Anyway, I got a little piece started, and now I'm going to thread it through the binding knees. So I've got my binding all folded in half, and it makes it about 1 1/8 wide, which is perfect for this thin quilt, but it's a table runner. And I'm just going to leave my iron here. It's on my binding knees, and it's not going to hurt anything because it's that silicone that is not going to burn, let anything burn. Okay, and I am going to do it. I sew my binding on, so I apply from the back. Okay, and what I'm going to do is lay this on here, and I'm going to make sure that I'm just going to run it through like this and make sure my seams aren't going to hit a corner. I don't like it when my strips hit my corners. And it doesn't look like it is. I think where I'm starting is a good place to start. Okay, so I'm going to start right here, and I'm going to leave myself about 6 inches. Okay, I leave about that much, and then I just sew it on a scant 1/4 inch. My foot is a scant 1/4 inch, and a scant 1/4 inch is just under a 1/4 of an inch. Okay, so I'm just going to start sewing. Okay, now when I get to this corner, I'm going to stop at about a 1/4 of an inch away from the edge of my quilt or my table runner. This is a table runner. Okay, and then I'm just going to aim this to the corner, and I'm going to stitch it off. Then I'm going to fold it back. Like this. I learned this little trick from Caitlin. I don't know her new name. She was Caitlin Palace. Anyway, to stitch it clear off, and I like that because when you just stop a 1/4 of an inch away, and then you have to back stitch, it adds extra stitches there, bulks it up. But this kind of reinforces it on a 45-degree angle. Okay, so then you put this back, you flip it back, see, so that the binding is right in a line with your quilt or your project. Okay, see how that is folded? Then you just bring it forward. So that it's right in line with this. And then this corner should look like this. Okay? So then fold this down. Then you're going to put it back in the machine. And you're going to start sewing again. Try not to pull your binding as you're going. I do that so much, and it's so frustrating because it bows your quilt or your table runner or whatever. It makes it bow in. So, okay, I'm coming to the next corner, and I'm going to stop about a 1/4 of an inch away. I'm going to turn it to the corner and stitch off. Then I'm going to turn my quilt and flip the binding back like this. See how that is flipped back in a straight line? Then I'm going to come forward and leave it right up to that edge. I'm going to just make sure that lays really nice back down like this, so that there's a nice little fold right on the edge. Then I'm going to just start right there and sew it down. Okay, I'm going to stop 1/4 of an inch from the edge, turn it, come off, and I'm almost done. Okay, then I'm going to flip it back. And then flip it forward, holding it right there. So the fold is right along this edge. And the binding is right along this edge. I'm going to make sure it's all straight, no creases in it. And I'm going to go again. Then I'm going to show you. See how this is now? It just caught that right there. It's going to make a real nice mitered edge when I flip it. did that same thing on the corner again, where I just, well, I didn't stop, but I'm used to doing this. I just sewed right off into the corner. Okay, so then I'm going to flip it back again. It's at a 45-degree angle, and then I'm going to bring it forward so the fold is right up in that corner on the top edge. This is down the side, and I'm going to start again. Okay, now I am going to stop about at least 6 inches from where this other one ends. Okay. I'm going to just stop right there. Now, how I join them is, this is where it's tricky, where everybody has a hard time with. Okay, so I have a seam right there, and I didn't want it to show, and I have plenty of extra binding. So what I do in that case is I unpick some of this that I left only like this, and I unpicked it. Now I'm going to cut it off so that when I join these, I'm not going to be joining it right on that other seam, okay? In fact, I still want to go further away, so I'm going to even cut it some more. I'm going to cut it off some more. All right. And then if I don't have enough space, I'm going to unpick it a little bit more. There. All right, now what I'm going to do is I'm going to overlap them. And I am going to overlap them the width. And how I do this is take my end and I'm overlapping the width of my binding. Okay, so I'm going to lay that there. See the edge right here of the under one? That's right there. And I'm just going to cut it right here. All right, and we won't need that. All right. And then I'm just going to cut a smidgen off, like 1/8 of an inch. All right, now I'm going to open this one so it's the right side up. And I'm going to open the right side down on top like this, like I did the joining of all the strips. And it gets a little tight, but I'm just going to bring my quilt over. That's when it's nice to have some long tails here to work with. So I'm overlapping like this, matching it up. And then I'm going to take some pins and I'm going to pin it, because once I'm gonna have some tension on it when I try to put it underneath the, okay, and then I get my quilt up on and turn it like this, and we're gonna get this sewn on a 45-degree angle. So I've just lined up this corner on this red line. I sewed right over my pins. Then I'm going to cut off to 1/4 of an inch. And you know what I like to do before I cut it? I like to check and make sure I'm not twisted, because sometimes you get it twisted when you're first starting out. And I didn't pay attention to that because I knew. But I usually check it before I cut it. I check it and make sure that one of these aren't twisted. I have been known to do that, so have them twisted. So, but this is a small enough project, I knew it wasn't twisted. And then I finger press this seam open like that. And see how nicely this is going to lay down here? Now I'm going to start where I left off. And sew the last little strip on, and then see how nice that looks? It just went in really nice. Now the last thing I'm going to show you is I don't pin all my binding down. I just pin the corners, and I'm going to show you how I pin them, because this is important too. So I get it like this, and I flip this up like this. Flip this so the corner's like this. And I take the one on the right and I fold it in. And I use a clip. In fact, I use a couple of clips so it holds good. Okay, then I tuck this right one up like this. And I fold this down like that. And it makes a nice little mitered corner. Now, if it's not lining up, I just stick something up into the crease there, like that, to push it up. And then it usually lines right up. Then on here, I do put a pin, because a clip just doesn't get it good into the corner. And then I clip down these others, clip a couple of down here, a couple down here. Now you can hand stitch this down so it's hidden completely, or like me, I have arthritis now and it hurts to hand stitch. So I do, I sew really close to the edge in the matching color, and it usually goes right into my crease on the other side with the size of binding I do. Or if it doesn't, it's just right along here. I've even been known to use clear mono poly thread in my bobbin so it really doesn't show at all. And so that's how I do it. I do each corner like that, sew clear around it, and I'm done. And I hope this helps. And let me know if you have questions. My email is quiltedhearts@gmail.com. I'd be happy to help you out. Thanks for tuning in.